Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the YPN Atlantic Grow event. We have a great program in store today. Thank you for joining us for our first YPN Grow event of the year. My name is Dennis Parhurst, and I'm the Communications and Atlantic Region Program Manager with EFC, and I'm excited to welcome you all for today's presentation. Now, before we get started, I would like to take a moment to thank our YPN sponsors for their commitment in supporting events like these. A special shout out to our regional Atlantic sponsors, Eaton, Graybar Canada, and Munden Enterprises. With that, I'd now like to call on our YPN Atlantic Chair, Mitch DeWare, to introduce our speaker today. Mitch?
Thanks, Dennis. It's my pleasure to introduce Imo Akide. In 2002, Imo Akide started his company, EjiTech, to help people and businesses effectively manage their finances, increase productivity, and achieve goals. He does this through coaching, workshops, seminars, online courses, publication, and personal example. Imo enjoys showing people how to easily take control of their finances through practical steps that bring the greatest reward over time. He believes everyone has a skill, hobby, or a passion that when realized brings fulfillment and joy. This is why he actively helps people find their passion and live their best life. Imo is a published author, and one of his highlights in 2019 was donating 9,000 copies of his book, How Students Save Over $10,000 a Year, to grade 12 students to help them manage their finances as they transition out of high school and start their post-secondary education and careers. Imo uses his MBA, PMP, Project Management Professional, IT, social media, search engine optimization, and business skills to help clients solve problems, get discovered, and increase profits. In his spare time, Imo plays tennis, squash, chess, and is a budding real estate and equity investor. Now, please join me in welcoming Imo to the virtual stage. Imo.
Thank you very much. Okay. Well, hello, everyone. Like I said, I am Imo. I own EjiTech. And today, I just want to talk a little bit about the impact of saving money and just go briefly on how you have all you need to start taking control of your money and the advantages that this present opportunity we are in today presents to us. So for a little bit of what this is all going to be about, well, before I get into that, well, that's my company. I know that Dennis and Co would have links to that, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. But part of what I'm trying to do here is give you some information and also give you access to resources from the recording of this session to some of the other materials I have out there that you could use to help you get your financial goals reached. So the agenda today is I'm going to talk about why save money in the first place. I'm also going to run through a bulk part of the presentation on how to save money, and then the impact of saving money, and then, as I said earlier on, how to get more information. Because the whole idea of this, since I guess I'm 22 years into owning the business now, is to make it easy for people to get access to information so they don't have to reinvent the wheel. Now, Dennis, before I go on, how is my pace in terms of speaking speed?
Really well.
Okay, excellent. So I told them earlier on I was going to talk about the mango tree story, and I actually even came today with 2 actual mangoes. But anyway, before I get into the why, I'll tell you the mango story as it would help you understand my why for doing what I do. So back in my country in Africa, when I was a kid, we moved to a house or a compound that had many mango trees. These trees were there before they were planted before we were there, and were fruiting by the time we got there. We stayed at this compound for about 17 years before we came to Canada. And every single year, without failing, the tree produced thousands of mangoes without us doing anything to it. So what I do in business actually is I try to create mango trees. Well, I've created a bunch for myself, and also teach people how to create mango trees, which are things that you can build and create, and then they produce income over time for a long time. Now, one of the pivotal moments that I understood that we had gotten this mango tree thing right for my family and I was about 10 or 12 years ago, where we didn't spend salaries for 6 months because the mango trees or the businesses we had were producing income that covered all our bills. So what I want to do today anyway is show you how you can take the skills that you have, you can take the opportunities that are around us, and you can also take technology and build things to scale. But to do that, first of all, you have to take control of your finances. Now, the first question that I would say you should ask yourself is why save money? Don't get me wrong, it is fun to spend money, and I do enjoy spending money. It's just I spend money on buying houses and things that produce income over time. Now, the reason why it is good for you to know your why is that it would help you make the decisions that you have to make along the way to get the results you want. So when you know your why, then the decisions you make on what you buy today, you know, what you invest in today, and how you spend your money today would be controlled because you know exactly why you're doing it. For me, my why was freedom. Freedom for my family, freedom to not be tied to a job if I didn't want one, freedom to be able to live wherever I wanted, freedom to sleep without owing anybody a cent. I tell you, it's a beautiful thing. And so I spend a lot of time trying to teach people how to take whatever money situation they're in and take steps and be intentional about the things they do every day so they can get to where they want to go to financially. So I don't know if you have pens or papers, but I would say even when you leave this presentation, just remember a couple of things. Remember mango trees, and then remember your why. Because like I said, those are the things that would help you stay the course. When you see something shiny that might want to detract you or distract you from reaching that goal. So what is your why? Write that down. It's very important, you know. And if you are in a relationship, it is good for you and your partner to sit down and talk about your why. You know, why do you want to do this? What do you want out of life? If both of you get on the same page, it makes it a lot easier to take the steps and make the decisions you have to make to get there. Because it does take time. It could take, 3 years to 10 years or whatever. But it starts now when you decide what you want to get and why you want to get that goal. So a lot of times when I have seminars or I do functions and people come in and I hear things like, well, I get paid and I don't know what happened at the end of the month, all my money is gone, And that's because it seems to them that money is some mystery that, it's just, they know how much money comes in, but then poof, at the end of the month, just like magic, it's all gone. The key to conquering that is to actually have a budget. Today, you can have a budget on your phone. It could be a piece of paper, it could be a spreadsheet, it could be whatever. If you're on the Apple phone, you could go onto the Apple ecosystem and download the free budget app. Or if you're an Android, you could do the same. And they also have some paid products also. The key to a good budget is this. It has to be something that you can easily enter information in so you can track how you're spending money over time. If you can't track it, you can't control it. So it's key to have a budget. We all know how much money we get paid. We need to have that same clarity into how much money we spend. I remember a client coming in one day and after doing her budget for about 2 weeks, was surprised how much money she spent eating out or how much money she spent on expensive coffees or lattes and stuff. Not that there's anything wrong with that. And in fact, if you take care of the other parts of your money and your budget, that is a small amount of money to go and enjoy a drink or two. So it's not about not spending money and having fun, but it's about being intentional about how much you spend and where you spend your money, and at any time know exactly where your money is going and what it's doing for you. I do have a budget calculator on my website. which if you want to use the old school Excel type of thing, you get one there. But like I said earlier on, you can go to your app store for whatever phone you have and download one there that works for you. So for budget, I'll just give a little summary about this. Key thing is, first of all, if you don't have one, start one today. So you select a tool, you create a budget, you track your spending, and then the key thing is to analyze the results. So for example, you might think, I only spend $300 a month eating out. Is it $300? Is it more or is it less? And when you analyze those results, you make changes to get you back in line with what you need to do to get you to your goal of why you're trying to save money in the first place. Now, there are three big things that take over 62% of your income. They are your housing or accommodation, your car or your mode of transportation, and your food. It works out to, well, I did this about 2 years ago. It was about 29% was spent on housing. Now with the current prices of houses, that probably is a bigger chunk. About 20% on cars and 13% on food. And in all of this, the truth is that there are ways that you could reduce costs. And we'll just talk a little bit about that. So when it comes to your house, the key thing here is to understand what your budget for a house is before you go out and buy a house. Now, most of you probably already have houses, so you're already in one. But the question now becomes, how can you make sure that when you're doing things to the house, it could be upgrades or repair or maintenance, that you're not essentially drowning yourself in more debt while you're trying to pay off what you currently have. A good example of this could be if your kitchen functions, don't spend $30,000 to go remodel the kitchen if your goal is to pay off the house quickly so you could do other things. Again, nothing against remodeling your kitchen and all, but it's just, is whatever you're trying to do, does it align with you getting the goal of being, if it's debt-free or if it's having income to start a business or income to invest? Those are the kind of questions that you ask yourself. So that when you're making decisions on your house, you take time and make the right ones for you. Now, my decisions for how I want to invest in my house are unique to me, just as yours are unique to you. So you have to figure out what works for you and not what works for your friend or for your boss or for email. So again, we talked about the number is 29% in accommodation. The key thing again is to just realize, each time you have to make any change to your house, is it required? Is it necessary? Is it cosmetic? And does it add to you getting that dream or target you want to get to financially, or does it pull you back away from that? When you're conscious of that, then you can make an intentional decision as to what works best for you and your family. Now, I just want to talk a little bit about interest rates, because everything we do, especially when it comes to borrowing money or using a credit card or buying a car, interest rate plays a big role. And interest rates is fantastic when it's being paid to you. It gets terrible when you're paying it out. So I have this little picture here about the a credit card, and that looks like a bear trap or something. But it's not that credit cards are bad. It's just credit cards used irrationally becomes a bad thing for your finances, more so because of the interest rates that are charged on the cards. If you have one of those high value cards, it could be 12% or it could be 20%. Now, if you know anything about the rules of the rule of 72 when it comes to how money compounds, if you have a credit card and you owe $10,000 on it, and the interest rate, to keep things simple, is 20%, it means that every 3.5 years, if you don't pay off that money, it doubles. So if you have $10,000 in 3.5 years, if you're just paying the minimum and still shopping onto it, it becomes $20,000. And in another 3.5 years, it becomes $40,000. And in another 3.5 years, it becomes $80,000, right? So that's the trap when you don't pay off your bill at the end of the month when you get your statement. Now, if you're being paid 20% in interest, that's fantastic. But when you're paying it out, if you keep it revolving, that's what happens, and that's how you get into debt. And that's why credit card debt is a crisis in the, well, I guess in North America or many other parts of the world. Now, your credit score is important, and actually your credit score determines what kind of credit or what kind of interest rate, sorry, you get when you go to borrow money. So if you're going to, say, buy a house or buy a car, any of those big purchases, if your credit score is very high, you get a chance to get a slightly lower rate than somebody else who has a bad credit score. Right. So it is very important to maintain a high credit score, or if you have one that is not high, do the things you have to do to build it and make it better. So here's the chart that shows you credit scores. If you're between 750 and 850, you're excellent. 700 to 749, good, and fair, and then poor and bad at the bottom. The good news is there are things you can do to move you up from one level to the other and keep on improving to get yourself to a higher credit score. And again, like I said earlier on, the higher your credit score, the better interest rate you get when you're getting your mortgage or when you're buying a car, which means more money in your pocket. So in Canada, you're allowed to get at least one free credit report every year. And the three largest credit agencies are Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. So you could send them an email or you go on their website, they'll give you the information you need to get a free credit report or your free credit report. It makes sense for you to get a hold of that so you could check to make sure that the information there is correct. If it's not correct, you can call them back to make changes. And if you know what your score is, you can begin to do things to make it better. So the question I get a lot is, how is your credit score calculated? So it's based on different categories. For example, your payment history. So that's how often you pay on time, weighs about 35% into the score. The amount owed is also about 30% weight, right? And I believe you shouldn't carry over a third of the value of the card. You could again check that with your financial advisor. Also, the credit history length. So how long have you had credit, as in were you paying off something for the house or you bought a car, or how long have you had that from the first time you got your first credit card? And then also public records. That's, if you ever take into bankruptcy small claims court because you didn't pay something on time. And also new credit applications take 10%. This means if you go out and each time you're offered a credit card, you apply for one, part of that will affect your credit score because it says you have many cards and therefore you're exposed to credit or to a scenario where you could spend a whole lot more money than if you just had one or two cards. Okay, so it's your payments history is the highest, amount owed on the card. Do you pay your balances off on time? And how much is left over when you pay? Do you pay it in full or do you pay some? Your credit history length, public records, and your new credit application. So when you see all those cards, invitations to apply for cards, just if you already have the two you need, you don't need any more. So 3 ways to improve your credit score are: pay your bills on time, carry a low balance, and the third one is to limit your credit card applications. Now, the second of the big three is how much you spend on transportation. Now, again, this is a big area where if you're not intentional, you could sink a whole lot of money, because I think the average price of a new car now is probably about, I don't know, it's about $40,000 to $50,000 now. And if you include any of the hybrids or the electric cars, it could be more than that. Well, here's the key thing, some people are into cars, and if that's your thing, great. But when you're making decisions on how much to spend on a car or what your budget should be on a car, it's important to weigh how does that amount that you're going to spend on the car affect your overall goal to get financial freedom or to have less stress because you want less debt. So I did this chart a couple of years back, and I used the average price of a new car at $25,000, but we know that that's a whole lot more than that now. For some cars, it's almost twice that. But just to explain that, at the time when I did this, I use myself as an example. I tend to buy cars, used cars that are 4 to 7 year olds. I pay them off as soon as I get them. But let's imagine I spent only $10,000 on a car. Over 25 years, I would spend only $40,000 on cars. And if we're a 2-car household, which we are, that would equate to about $80,000 on cars. Whereas if you're buying a brand new car, and if I use the amount today of $50,000, for one person, you'll spend $200,000 on a car or on cars over 25 years. And if you are a family that has 2 cars, that work out to be almost $400,000 on cars by the 25th year. So the reason why we're able to pay off many of the things which we paid off, including our houses and properties and stuff, was because we just looked at cars as just basic transportation, wanted to get from point A to point B for the least amount of cost in a solid, reliable car. So what we'll do is we'll get a used car, we'll take it to the mechanic and get it checked out. They give us the thumbs up or the thumbs down after they've done a one-over of the car, a one-over inspection of the car, and then that's what we buy. So our money goes into other things, not cars. The bulk of our money has gone into real estate and other investments. And that's what has given us freedom we have today. Now, if cars are your things, as long as you're going into it intentionally, then you're okay. It's just knowing what you're doing and knowing how that impacts the plan that you have for yourself and your family. So you're making the right choice for you. Again, my decision on how I buy cars is different from your decision on how you buy cars, because we have different goals and different values financially. But it's you just knowing with you and your partner, what kind of goal do you want financially, and make sure everything you're doing, including how you buy your house and how you buy your cars, falls in line with that. So the key points about the car thing is, the average spent again on new cars is probably almost $40,000 to $50,000 now. You can get, if you choose to, a very reliable used car. You pay a quarter of the cost and you don't deal with depreciation. Also, when you're calculating how much it'll cost for a car, think about the total cost of ownership, which includes, fueling, insurance, and so on, right? And there are also alternative transportation options in town. And then insurance considerations, because some cars cost up to 20 or 30% more to insure, either because they get stolen more often or because of how often they break down and things like that, or how they fare in accidents, right? You can also increase your deductibles so that you're paying less on your insurance for the car. And make sure if you have older cars, you reduce the kind of coverage you have to match the age of the car and the value of the car. The next couple of slides I'm just going to go over quickly. And again, it's just remembering that every little thing you do adds up to the big goal of where you're trying to get to financially. So it's, if you have the full package of everything at home and you find that you're not really watching that much TV, the question is, do you need the full package of the internet or entertainment package which you have? Now, I know that there's the is it gigabit internet. If you're just somebody who just goes on Facebook, sends emails, and watches Netflix and YouTube, that is overkill. It's almost excess capacity. It's like having a car that can go 300 kilometers an hour, and you live in Canada where the speed limit is 110. There's so much of the excess speed that you're never going to do, or else you get a speeding ticket, right? So it's the same way if you have the fastest internet and you're paying a top tier price, but all you're doing is just using that much, bandwidth, uploads and downloads, then you're paying for too much. And you could do that for the cell plan you have, the internet which you have, the cable TV package, or the streaming packages which you have. Try and tailor them to your consumption so that you're not paying for stuff that you don't use. Again, it's like having a gym membership and you never go to the gym, right? Or subscriptions to magazines that you don't read. If you're not using it, it might be a good place to go and save some money, because again, whatever you save adds up over time and helps you again towards your financial goal for freedom, if that's your thing. This is a quick one. I guess most people probably have now shifted to heat pumps and solar, but it's a good thing to have an assessment of your home to see how you could reduce the amount of money you pay on heating and cooling, especially in Canada for heating, because that could end up being a chunk of money going out each year, which if you had a more efficient system, which could be the system itself or better insulation, could help you save some money. Even if it's only $600 a year, that's $600 you could use to get more mangoes, or you could use it for investing in other things or pay off debt that you have. I put this one here because of the demographics of the people who I speak to a lot. And I give an example. When our daughter was growing up, I think I bought one bicycle and then sold it on Facebook Marketplace and bought another one on Facebook Marketplace and kept doing that over and over again. So I think over the lifetime of her, of when she was riding a bicycle, I think I ended up paying probably about $10 because I got used ones that worked, you know. So we talk about used cars. I give the example of a ladder. As long as it's a safety to be good. If you buy a brand new hammer or you buy a used hammer, they work exactly the same, right? So just when you're buying things, just think about the value you're getting for new versus used, and is it worth getting used so you could save some money? Again, I talked earlier on about cell phones, so I wouldn't talk too much about that. It's just check the plan you have. Make sure you have it tailored to your needs, so you're not paying for excess capacity. Food is, again, we talked about, it was one of the big three. And some of the things that could get you is just, you could make a cup of coffee for yourself for 10 cents, or you could buy one for $5, right? You could make a sandwich for yourself for 50 cents, or you could buy one for $5. It's just being intentional about how you spend money on things so that you get to keep more of your money, because the 10-cent coffee or the $5 coffee just about tastes the same. And you can take advantage of bulk buys for certain things that you know that you would not, you can consume before they go bad. So just a little touch on insurance services. Before I go on that, I want everyone who has kids who are going to university or college to get a free copy of this book that he talked about, how students save over $10,000 a year while going through college or university. It was the first book I wrote as soon as I finished my MBA. I have since written 6 different books, and I just give it away for free now. I will leave a link, or I'll give Dennis and Co a link so that anyone who wants a copy can get information to get the coupon code that they would use to download it for free. Okay, so just insurance services. When you are trying to get your property insured, it is best to go through, get a couple of quotes, even get an insurance broker. Their job is to go out there and help you get the lowest amount of price. Because again, based on the insurance company and your situation, are you a 2-car household? Are you, do you have 1 house and 2 cars? Which I know is one of the big companies that's a specialty where you get low rates for that. But just to make sure that you're getting the coverage you need for the least amount of price, so you can save money on that. So it's another place where, when done right, you could save yourself a couple of dollars. I know I made a switch last year, and I think I saved about, how much was it? It was about $1,200 something I saved, because we have multiple properties and cars, and it was just, we switched to a provider who had better coverage for us in that scenario, and that worked out well. So it's worth inspecting every year or two. You just go out and send out quotes to, send for quotes. And I have a book on my website that actually gives you a template. It's for free, that helps you answer all the questions you need. So you can just forward your completed answers to the insurance company by email, so you can get a quote and see if what you currently have is great, or if it's too expensive, or if you should switch. So just remember, on average, people struggle with debt and have money issues, and over 150% of their annual salary because of debt. What I'm trying to say is you don't have to be average. You could start taking or making choices or making decisions today that will put you in a position whereby when we revisit this 3 years or 5 years or 10 years from now, you would have better control of your finance and be able to get the freedom and the peace that comes from not owing anybody anything. Like I said, you sleep like a baby when you don't owe anyone anything. If interest rate goes up, if you don't owe anyone anything, you go, well, it's sad that it happens, but at least it wouldn't affect you. So just remember this, that if you're buying brand new and you do 2 cars and you change them every 7 or 8 years, over 25 years, you would have spent as much as you would have spent on a house, right? So that's brand new. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's something to consider. Okay. So the impact of your life, again, like I said early on, is just the freedom that comes from being in control of how you spend money. You have less stress. When economic changes happen, like they're doing now, you're in a better position to weather that, right? Imagine if you didn't need your salary for a month or 3 months or a year. What would that mean? Would that mean that you are freer to pursue the things that you are very passionate about? Does it mean that you'll be able to go on trips? Actually, I'm going on a trip shortly, a YouTube trip, actually. I'm a YouTuber, where you can take your family and take friends and just go relax, right? For me, those are the things that make it worth, if you want to call it the sacrifice in the past of trying to get my finances in gear. And that's the same thing that I'm trying to share with you, that you could take control and be in the driver's seat so you could live the kind of life you want to live and have the freedom to be creative and to contribute to society. Now, I have this here because people always ask, well, how can I get access to information? So for those who want the book, here, there's my mouse. So this is the bookstore, and there'll be a video with a coupon that will let you get that for free. The questionnaire on the top here is the one for insurance. So if you want to go and get insurance quotes, that's a free one. You can just go on and download it. It's a fillable PDF that gives you all the questions you need to answer. So all you have to do is just forward it to the insurance company and ask for a quote. And you could send one email and blind copy the insurance companies and say, please send me a quote. Here's my scenario, right? Here is my YouTube channel. And what I try to do with the channel is give information that I've learned over time and also bring in industry leaders in different areas to come in and talk about how they were able to overcome certain obstacles and solve problems so that people could learn from that. Now, I do have online courses, but I find that YouTube, because it's free, it's a way for people to go in and get information without any paywall, so they can go there and there's no cost. It's just, do they want to go and consume the information and learn from it and try and make some changes in their lives? And so I have the QR codes there for anyone who wants access to that. And I said I'd written 6 books. Those are the 6 books. And each of them actually came up either because I was dealing with customers or clients who had similar questions. And when I get 3 or 4 or 5 clients in a row ask the same questions, I write a book about it. So that's how I wrote the book on how to find your passive income business, how to test your business ideas, and so on. And then when I got people ask a lot of questions on how we had great tenants, so even through the COVID or the pandemic, all our tenants paid on time, right? So I wrote a book. It's only about 10 or 12 pages on how you can get and find great tenants, right? So that's how I write. I create based on feedback which I get, and then I write out something so people can go and get it at their own time and learn from that. So to conclude, there are many areas to reduce expenses. Many of them are just little changes that make a big financial impact. You change how you spend, you change how you shop, you change how you eat or how you buy food and stuff. And over time, it makes a big impact on your finances. Many of them are not difficult or inconvenient. You could make a cup of tea in the microwave with a tea bag, or you could go buy one for $5, right? So again, it's long-term discipline is the key. It's little changes over time that makes a big difference. And again, there's a lot of information you can get from my website, EjiTech.com, or by subscribing to my YouTube channel, where you get information for free, and you get information from leaders across Canada that come in and talk about how they're able to do things better. And we're always here to help you, the Dennis team and co and myself. And you should also use a budgeting tool so that you can start controlling your money, or you see where your money is going so you can make changes. Right. So, Mangoes, this is the question period where any questions which you have, we could go through that now. Dennis, I'm not sure how that.
Yeah. Emo, we do have some really great questions coming in. Hi, guys. I'm Mackenzie Findell, the Vice Chair of the Atlantic Regional YPN. Thank you, Emo, so much for the presentation. I think that was like very insightful, and there's a couple of things we could all take away from there. We're all trying to save money during this time. So if anybody has any questions, just throw those in the chat. There are a couple really good questions coming in right now. I can get us started with one too. And I think like a lot of this group is like in the 20s to 30s range. A lot of us still have some student loan payment happening. So Emo, what kind of is your best advice for someone who's still paying some student loans, trying to save for the future in a family, but also like switching gears into like planning for retirement? What are some of your thoughts there?
Excellent. Now, am I back on? Can you see me?
Yeah.
Excellent. So one of the big things I would say again is we talked about all the little areas where you could try saving money and reducing costs and stuff. I would say first things first, go figure out your budget so you know where your money is going, and then go and start looking for places where you can reduce costs. So you could take that money to help pay off whatever loan you have. So it's from how you buy food, the kind of cars you buy, just the way you spend money, the way you entertain yourself. You should have fun because you work too hard not to. But you should have fun responsibly towards your finances. So I think, again, it's just going back to the things we talked about and going to all those little areas and making small incremental changes consistently so that over time you have extra money that you can put on your loan to pay that off. You should also balance what's the interest rate on your loan on your student's loan compared to the other loans you have. It still makes sense to pay the highest one off first, because you save the most amount of money that way.
Okay, that's really good. Here's another great question. Assuming that we have met the basics, if we had $10,000 in cash that we could invest, what would you suggest we spend it on to maximize our long-term return? Our RRSPs, TFSAs, placing that on the principal of our mortgage, placing it on a car loan, or where's your suggestion?
Okay, so that's a great question. I would say, again, back to interest rates, right? Which one has the highest interest rate? Knock that off first. And then after you've knocked off your debt, then have a little chat with your financial planner to figure out the best place to go, and invest that, right? Depending on your time horizon for when you want the money, right? But if you have outstanding debt, for example, say you have a credit card that has a 20% interest rate and you have a balance on that, it makes sense to go and knock that off, because even your mortgage rate is less than that, right? So that's the first thing I would do. I would knock off whatever high interest rates debt that I have, so that I'm keeping more of my money in my pocket.
Okay. Here's another one. This is a good question. When is the right time to start building credit for your younger children? Is there any way to do so before they turn 18 or 19? Should we be getting them a credit card in their name? Should they have bank accounts right away?
So I think 18 is probably the time when, because then they become responsible for their bank accounts and stuff. You could still set them up with a bank account earlier on, but I think you still have to co-sign as a parent. Is when they're about 18 that they could have that on their own. I guess you would know the temperament of your child to know if it's safe to give them a full-blown credit card, or you give them a credit debit card where they cannot spend more than they have in the bank, right? But if they are paying their phone bill, or if you put the phone bill in their name and they're paying that for their cell phone, that already starts building credit. So anywhere where they have a subscription for something they're paying, if it's in their name and it's being paid on time, they're building credit that way, right? For most of them, it's usually a phone. So a phone, and a credit debit card where they can't go past what they have in the bank account. That might be a good place to start. And then also give them information to help them understand money a little bit better. If they're 18, get them a copy of the book. It's free. And it's just, it's a mindset, and it's a way of thinking, which if they can learn it early, they'll do a whole lot better, right? Yeah.
Okay, we have another question coming in here. Emo, if I were to invest in a home, buying a new house, what would you suggest? A brand new home recently built, or a regular house that needs some renovations and spending money on the renovations and wait for that to grow? Is there other ways to invest in real estate where you don't need a huge investment and smaller ones to still get good returns? Kind of a two-part question there.
Right. Okay. So again, this is one way I would say, I'm just going to talk about some things generally, and then you could chat with your financial planner. I know you can get into real estate investment trust. I guess they're called REITs, but you should chat with your financial planner about that. You don't have to own property, but you invest in things that invest in real estate, and then you get a portion of that. Well, you don't get ownership of the property. It's just like you're buying stock almost. So you're buying equity into a big pool of money that's used to deal in real estate. Now, as far as buying the house, new or old, again, it depends on your budget, right? So how much do you have to spend that if you buy a house, you're not going to handcuff yourself because you're, you have a scenario whereby if something happens and you miss one paycheck, then everything is sunk, right? So you need to give yourself enough wiggle room in your budget as much as possible so that you have a mortgage that you could pay if things change. A good example of this happened in the last couple of years where the mortgage rate was only about 1 point something percent, and then it jumped up to 6. So if somebody was barely able to pay at 1.8%, now what happens to them when it shifts to 5%, right? So that's why you shouldn't get more house than you can afford, so to speak, because interest rates, excuse me, don't stay low forever. I remember the first time I came to Canada, there was a time when interest rates were about 12 to 13%, so double digits, right? So this idea of having interest rates on that 10% is something that just happened within the last 20 years, because before then it was a lot higher than that. Now, one way to buy a house that might be a little bit more is to buy a property that has an income generating section to the house. So if it has an in-law suite, or if you rent, you have a room that you can rent out. That's one way to get a house and get some equity on that. So I know of a young student here who just finished his master's and bought a house. He's not married, doesn't have any kids, but he has roommates, and because the roommates are paying X amount of dollars, it helps him to pay off his mortgage, right? So that's some kind of a hack that you could have. In a case if you have a family, and of course you want separation between where your family is staying and where your tenants are staying, if you have an in-law suite, you could do that also, right? So that's what I would do if I was to go do it all over again. I would look for something that has some income property to it, even if it's in the same building, so you can get some of the rent coming to help you pay off the mortgage, and you pay it off faster that way.
Okay. Here's a good one. What are some questions you would ask a financial planner? Like, how are you looking when you first sit down with a financial planner? What are some point blank questions you should present?
I ask how they're compensated. So the management expense ratio, because that's, how much will they make, whether I make money or not. How much experience do they have? They just fresh out of school, haven't been doing this for a while. And then based on my scenario, if I'm somebody, for example, who's interested in real estate investing, do they know much about that, or do they just know about stocks and bonds and stuff? So it's more trying to see if the expertise is in the area that is where you want to invest, is what I would try to find out. Next.
Okay, perfect. Another couple questions coming in here. Where would you suggest putting your emergency fund so it's easily accessible but not exposed to the market for short-term access? And then it's a GIC question mark.
Well, I think GICs have they have. I'm trying to think of how the maturity date and all that stuff. So I'm not sure how flexible those are. You have to look into that. But no, the place where you can get it the most accessible is your bank account, but then that gives you the least amount of interest, which today is probably less than 0.5%. So you're not gonna get any growth. And if you factor in inflation, it's almost like you're losing money because inflation is much higher than 0.5%. This would be a good question to talk to your financial planner based on your risk tolerance to figure out what investment would work best for you, and also your time horizon. Do you think you're going to have access to the money, or do you think you want access to the money in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, or whatever? So your risk tolerance and the time horizon before you think you're going to need the money. Are you saving because you want to buy a house? Are you saving because you want to buy another car in 3 years? Those are the things that you should give to your financial planner, and that would help them determine which product would work best for you. Next question.
Okay. What percent of your income do you recommend for savings? And if so, where? I know we talked about 62% for house, car, and food. What percent of your income are you recommending you put into savings, and where?
Okay, so look, I'm going to say start out with, if you can start with as much as you can, because I know we're in crazy times at the moment where everything's expensive and all that stuff. Look, if you could do 5% or if you could do 10%, that's great. Now, I'll tell you this much. If you could do 50%, that's even awesome, but that might be a tall stretch for most people. So here's the thing. Take care of controlling how your money goes out and how you spend. And then you take that extra amount and then you put it aside. Now, something you can do is you could say off the back that 10% of your, if you think you're okay with 10%, you could almost say automatically 10% of your income goes out as soon as your paycheck comes and goes somewhere else, so you can't touch it, right? Depending on your discipline level. But the answer to that is it just depends on what is your financial situation at the moment. So your expenses and your income that close, or do you have that much space or whatever? Because that determines how much you have to save. But as we spoke about earlier on, I guess the key thing is do your budget and then start figuring out where you could save money, where you're paying for excess capacity for things that you're not using. And then you can now take that money and then try and save that. You could go in and try and improve your credit score. So when you want to borrow, you get a lower interest rate so you can save money. Next time you're buying a car, you could consider if you want to get something brand new or if you want to get something used to save money. And then the difference, you put that away and save that and invest that later. So those are the kind of things that you could do, all the things we talked about earlier on, to free up more cash that you can use to pay off debt or invest. I hope I answered that question.
I think that's pretty good. And what about the where? Do you recommend RRSPs? Do you recommend TFSAs? Or do you recommend like directed investments? What are your thoughts on that?
All those ones depend again on the individual. I mean, I could say for me, it could be one thing. For you, it could be another thing. So that's an individual question. So again, sitting down with the financial advisor and saying, my plan is to, for example, it could be my plan is to buy a house in 6 years or in 4 years or whatever, or my plan is to pay off something in whatever years. Those kind of scenarios will determine what the best product is for you, right? So it's hard to give a blanket statement because I'm not trying to pay off a mortgage, right? I have no debt, so it's different, right? But I would say understand what your financial goal is, and then go to your financial planner with that, so they could carve out or build out something that is customized to your scenario.
Okay, I think this is our last question. If you had to name one, what is your most effective strategy for budgeting for people in their 30s?
Is just to, I would say have an app on your phone, and when you buy something, put it in. And there's somewhere, actually, as soon as you buy it, it automatically goes in there. It's just to make sure that all your expenses are tracked. Because what will happen is if you do that for a couple of months, it becomes a habit. And then when it becomes a habit, you don't even have to use your phone because you know exactly, what to do, right? So it's to build the habit of understanding where your money goes so that it becomes second nature. And without the phone, you're just doing it that way, right? So for example, if I went to go buy a car tomorrow, I'm not even looking at new cars. I just want to buy a 4 to 7 year old car that I could pay off the back and just walk away and not owe any money on it, right? So I don't need to meditate to do that. It's just what I'll do automatically.
Okay, that's perfect. Dennis, I'm going to throw it back to you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks, Emo. Thanks, Mackenzie, for that great Q&A session. A lot of information there for sure. I like, Emo, what you were mentioning about, Facebook Marketplace and the story of getting bikes for your daughter. I mean, same thing here. I mean, that's the first place I look is
Excellent.
Marketplace, almost like it's a store. And then if I can't find it in the Marketplace, then I go and try to find it in the store. So it's all about those little decisions. I thought this was very informative, very, very valuable information. So thank you. Thank you so much.